Okay, so get this. We're diving into this alternate 2024, and things went a little crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so this article called This is the End, o tal vez el principio, which I think means this is the end, or maybe the beginning.
Yeah, sounds about right.
It's by Carlos Villalobos. And it says Trump actually won the election.
Really?
Yeah, against Kamala Harris, no less.
Wow, that's a curveball. I did not see that one coming.
No, me neither.
Yeah.
So it really got me thinking, like, how could this even happen? You'd think with 4 criminal cases.
Right.
And, the country's so divided that would be political suicide.
Yeah, it's definitely a head scratcher. But Villalobos argues that, these problems that Trump had might have actually helped him win.
Okay, I got to know more about this. So how does he explain this unexpected victory?
Well, it's interesting. He points out that Harris ran on, stability and continuing what Biden did.
Okay.
But,
And I guess riding on Biden's legacy.
well, legacy might be a little generous. But, Harris didn't really address the anxieties that a lot of voters were feeling.
Right.
Like, the economy was unstable, there were concerns about immigration, and there was this feeling that things were out of control.
Yeah.
And she just didn't really seem to grasp that.
So she kind of missed the mark there.
Yeah,
And then Trump being Trump just kind of swooped right in.
exactly. He really hammered on this idea that America was lost, straying from some kind of golden age.
Right.
And he was the only one who could bring back that greatness. Classic populism.
Ooh. Hold on, though. What exactly is populism? I feel like that's one of those words that gets thrown around.
Yeah,
But I don't know if everyone really understands what it means.
that's a good point. Populism basically pits the people against the elite.
Okay.
They're claiming to represent the regular person against this corrupt establishment.
Got it.
They often use simple messages,
Right.
really emotionally charged messages,
Okay.
and they tend to do well when people are anxious and uncertain.
So Trump basically tapped into that feeling. It's
Yeah.
like telling people, I'm your only hope.
Exactly. And Villalobos says he targeted the people who felt left behind by all the changes.
Okay.
Like globalization and technology changing. Think about it. Manufacturing jobs going away, communities struggling, people feeling like the American dream is slipping away.
Yeah.
And he pointed the finger at immigrants, globalists, this deep state,
Right.
and promised to bring back their prosperity.
That's, it sounds pretty simple. Did the Democrats just completely miss what was happening?
Well, Villalobos is really critical of them. He says they just assumed they would get the Latino vote.
Oh, wow.
Like it was one big block.
Right.
And they didn't think about all the diversity in that group, so Trump saw that.
Interesting.
And he used it to his advantage.
So that was a pretty big mistake for them to make. Huh.
Yeah, demographics are always changing. You can't just assume everyone in a certain group will vote the same way.
You really have to understand each person in those groups. What are their worries? What are their hopes? And it sounds like the Democrats didn't do that.
Right.
Okay, so let's say Trump wins in this alternate 2024. What does America look like with him in charge? What's he planning to do?
So Villalobos actually dives into Trump's campaign promises.
Okay,
And surprise, surprise, they're pretty similar to what we saw before.
okay.
Tougher rules on immigration, skeptical of global alliances, and not really caring about climate change. But he wraps it all up in this promise to make America economically dominant again.
Yeah, he always goes back to that idea of a golden age.
Right, like when America was great.
It seems like he's really playing on people's nostalgia.
Yeah, but it's a powerful kind of nostalgia, especially for people who feel like they've lost something or been pushed aside.
Right.
He's saying things were better back then, and America was on top.
And that's what got him elected.
Wow.
This alternate reality is getting a little scary.
Yeah, it's a pretty stark picture. But what's even more interesting is how this connects to the rest of the world. Villalobos suggests that if Trump gets elected again, it could cause problems globally,
Oh,
like more division, and other countries may be following his example.
so this isn't just an American problem.
Yeah.
It could affect everyone.
Right. It's a lot to think about. Where do we even go from here? This is just the beginning. It is, and Villalobos doesn't avoid the tough questions. He ends his article with one that really makes you stop and think, will this be the end of democracy as we know it?
Whoa, okay. That takes this deep dive to a whole other level.
Yeah, and it's something we really need to think about carefully.
Right.
Because even though this alternate 2024 looks pretty bad, it can also teach us a lot about how democracy can be vulnerable
Yeah.
and how we can all protect it.
Okay, I'm ready for part 2.
Yeah, it's a question that people have been asking for a long time. Can democracy really survive all the challenges, like populism and fake news and all the division in society?
Right.
Villalobos doesn't really give a straight answer, like a yes or no.
Okay.
But he does talk about how resilient democracy is and also the real threats it faces.
So it's not like democracy is doomed, but we can't just sit back and relax either.
Exactly. And this is where it gets interesting.
Okay.
Villalobos says there are a few things that are really important for the future of democracy.
Okay, what are they?
First, he says people need to be involved.
Okay.
Like citizens need to be informed and active.
So it's not enough to just vote every few years.
Yeah.
We had to be involved all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we need to hold our leaders accountable.
That means being able to think critically
Right.
and tell the difference between what's true and what's not.
Exactly. And being able to talk to each other respectfully,
Yeah.
even when we disagree.
Even when we disagree. Right.
He also talks about the importance of institutions,
Okay, like what kind?
like a free press that can report the truth,
Okay.
a fair court system,
Right?
and checks and balances to limit the power of the president.
Got it. So it's not just about one person or one election. It's about the whole system.
Exactly. The things that make democracy work or make it fail.
And that's why this whole alternate 2024 thing is so interesting. It's not just about some weird what-if scenario.
Right.
It's about using this thought experiment to learn
Yeah.
about the dangers and the warning signs
Right.
and about what we can do to protect our own democracy. So this alternate reality is like a wake-up call. Like, hey, don't take democracy for granted,
Exactly. And Villalobos says we should use this Trump victory.
even though it's fake.
Right. Even though it's hypothetical.
Right.
To look at our own democracy.
Yeah.
Like, are we dealing with the things that are making people unhappy?
Right.
Are we encouraging people to get involved and think critically?
Right.
Are our institutions strong enough to handle populism and division?
Those are some really important questions.
They are.
It makes me think about the media, too.
Okay.
Villalobos says that in this alternate timeline, the media actually helped Trump get elected.
Really?
Yeah, even if they didn't mean to.
How did that happen?
Well, he talks about how the news is always on and how they focus on drama and conflict.
Oh, I see.
And he thinks that created the perfect environment for Trump
Yeah.
because he's all about drama and conflict.
Right. With his big personality and simple messages?
Exactly.
Yeah, makes sense.
So basically, the media was trying to get people's attention,
Right.
but they ended up making Trump seem normal.
It's like they gave him a platform to spread his message.
Yeah. And even in our own world, we see how the media can amplify voices that are divisive
Right.
and spread misinformation.
Yeah.
It's scary. It reminds us that we have to be really careful about what we believe.
Exactly. We need to think critically about everything we see and hear.
And that's not just about the news.
Right.
It's about everything. Politics, social
Okay.
media, even what our friends and family say.
Right. We need to be careful about all of it.
Okay, so we've talked about the media and citizens and institutions. But what about the Democrats? What was their role in all of this?
Well, Villalobos says they didn't really offer a good plan for the future. They focused too much on stability and keeping things the same.
Got it.
But in a time when people are worried and things are changing, that doesn't work.
So it wasn't just that Trump was good at scaring people.
Right.
The Democrats weren't giving people a better option.
Exactly. And Villalobos says they seemed out of touch.
Oh.
Like they didn't understand what people were going through.
So they were trying to play it safe
Yeah.
while Trump was going all out?
And that's part of what made him so dangerous. He knew how to use people's emotions.
Like their fear and anger?
Exactly. And he told them a story.
A story that made them feel good, even if it wasn't true.
Right. And that's what got him elected.
It's crazy how important stories are in politics.
Yeah, they can be more powerful than facts and logic.
It's scary.
Yeah,
We have to be careful about the stories we believe.
exactly. We need to analyze them and think about who's telling them and why.
Because if we don't, we could end up being manipulated.
Exactly.
So where does all of this leave us? We've looked at this alternate 2024,
Yeah.
where Trump becomes president again.
Right.
Pretty scary. And it makes you think about what could happen in our own world.
It does. And it reminds us that the choices we make have consequences.
Yeah, like who would we vote for?
Exactly. And the stories we believe in.
Right.
We all have a responsibility to participate in democracy.
To be informed,
Yes.
to think critically,
Yes.
and to fight for the future we want. It's
Exactly.
like we went through this crazy political maze. It was interesting, but also kind of scary.
Yeah, definitely. But even though it's a different timeline, it feels kind of familiar.
Yeah.
Like all those worries and divisions and wanting easy answers.
Right.
We're dealing with that stuff in our own world, too.
That's what makes this so interesting. It's not just some crazy story.
Right.
It feels like a warning.
Exactly. And I think it's time to shift gears now.
Okay.
Instead of getting stuck in the what ifs.
Okay.
Let's think about what we can learn from this alternate 2024.
Like, how can we use this to understand our own politics? Okay, so if this deep dive was like a guidebook for our own political reality, what would be the most important lessons?
Well, first we have to recognize that a lot of people are unhappy.
Okay.
Like Villalobos talked about economic anxiety and cultural changes and people feeling left behind.
Right.
That's what made Trump's message so appealing. We can't just ignore those feelings.
So we can't just say those people are wrong or stupid.
Right. We need to understand why they're frustrated.
Okay.
And the second lesson is that populism is really powerful.
Yeah.
Even in this made-up scenario, Trump won.
Right.
Because he told simple stories that people wanted to believe, even if they weren't completely true.
It's like you said before, people want stories, especially when things are uncertain.
Exactly. And a good story can be really convincing, even if it's not based on facts.
So we can't just use facts and logic to fight these stories.
Right. We need to understand why they're so appealing, but how they play on people's emotions.
We need to tell better stories. Stories that are true and that connect with people emotionally. And it makes me think about the people who voted for Trump in this alternate timeline.
Yeah.
And in our real world, too.
Right.
It's easy to say they're just gullible or racist, but that's too simple.
You're right. And that's another important lesson from Villalobos.
What's that?
We can't make assumptions about groups of people. Like he talked about how diverse the Latino vote is.
Right.
We need to remember that everyone is different.
And their experiences and beliefs might not fit into our neat little category.
Exactly. It's about listening to people and trying to understand them, even if we don't agree with them.
Yeah.
And the last lesson is that we all have to be involved in democracy.
Okay.
It's not a spectator sport. We need to participate and stay informed and hold our leaders accountable.
So it's not about being sad about what might have happened in this alternate 2024.
Right.
It's about using it to be more engaged in our own world.
Exactly. It's a reminder that we can change the future.
The choices we make today will create the world of tomorrow.
Exactly.
This deep dive has been really amazing.
It had.
We got to see a world that's both familiar and strange.
Yeah.
And it reminded us that democracy is fragile
It is.
and that what we do matters.
It does. It shows us that even crazy things can happen.
Yeah.
And that we need to understand what's going on in our own politics.
More than ever. So as we leave this alternate 2024, the big question is, what are we going to do?
What will we do with what we've learned?
How will we use it to make a better future?
A future where democracy doesn't just survive, but actually thrives.
That's something worth thinking about.